delve into our next pivotal topic. We'd urge all of you to now kindly be seated as we are now calling upon our next set of leaders to talk about building bridges, creating a global fintech ecosystem. The moderator of this conversation is going to be Mr. Arjun Singh, partner Arthur D. Little. We have our eminent speakers joining us on the same is going to be Daranee Saeju, Assistant Governor, Bank of Thailand, Mr. Angelo M. Duarte, Head of Department, Central Bank of Brazil, Ms. Chihiro Ban, Section Chief, Financial Services Agency of Japan, and Mr. Khaled M. Albasias, Director, Financial Sector Development, Saudi Central Bank. Let's humbly and warmly welcome all our leaders now on stage.
Thank you for everybody who stayed back for our session here. What I wanted to start with was the topic is about building bridges, creating a global fintech ecosystem. And if you haven't realized, we actually have from Japan to Brazil represented with 2 pit stops in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Thailand. So actually, this is very representative of I guess, the topic. Also, I thought it was actually quite, I guess, topical with sort of the timely moment of this conversation, right? We're seeing some very interesting, if I may say, diverging trends in the world. The world, one could argue, is becoming increasingly multipolar again. There is a lot of conversation around regulatory harmonization, whether at a regional level or beyond. And there's a lot of good work going on. I think in the last decade, and especially in the last 5 years, we are seeing some incredible collaboration happening, number of initiatives where the central banks and the policymakers have come together in terms of solving problems which are common to all of them, whether they're cross-border or otherwise. And to a large extent, fintech in its essence is borderless, right? Because most fintechs want to be in more than one place because they believe they can solve problems. So with that said, I'd like the esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. Chihiro, we can start with you introducing yourself, and we'll end with Khaled, and then we'll kick off the discussion. Please.
Okay. So, hi everyone, this is Chihiro from Financial Services Agency, Government of Japan. So, you might be not familiar with FSA, but FSA is an integrated financial regulator supervising almost all type of financial services, including fintech. So, I'm so honored to be here with you today, and thank you for having me at this panel. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon all. I'm Daranee Saeju. I'm Assistant Governor at the Bank of Thailand, the central bank. And my portfolio includes payment, fintech, IT risk supervision, consumer protection.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Angelo Duarte from the Central Bank of Brazil. In Brazil, the central bank is not only the monetary authority, but also the regulator and the supervisor of the financial system.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Arjun and RBI, for being here today. My name is Khaled Albasias. I'm the Director of the Financial Sector Development at the Saudi Central Bank, and part of my portfolio is the Fintech Development Office, which looks after the Fintech in Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
So let me start with a question. I guess it's an open question. It's to all panelists, and I thought it would be opportune to ask you guys, do you really see a need for a global fintech ecosystem? Does anyone have a go first?
That's an easy answer, right? Yes, of course. We see a need to build our own domestically fintech ecosystem that allow it to be deliver the benefits, the final benefits to the consumer, to improve their productivity, to be more inclusive, to enhance their immunity, to be more resilient. So domestically, nowadays, you cannot just live alone. The world actually has no border. When with digital, it's everywhere. So of course, it has to extend to the global fintech ecosystem.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that more important than connecting fintechs in different jurisdictions and creating a a global network. It's also important maybe for cross-border payments and other service. But it's to know how the regulators and authorities has faced the thriving fintechs and how the fintechs are competing with the traditional financial sector and how regulators has been dealing with this movement.
Angelo. Khaled, Chihiro, anything to add to it?
Okay, so I think it's like, of course, it's really important what they said, and I would like to add like the consciousness dialogue among public sector, private sector, and academia is quite important as well. Yeah.
I think probably global is too big of a word. I would suggest regional, like in our region, GCC, Gulf Corporate Councils, where we really work with other central banks in the region to harmonize and work out some of the regulations together to support the movement of fintechs between the region. Then probably once you have that, then you might discuss global collaborations on a global level.
That's an interesting perspective because those are the conversations I tend to have, which is should it be global, should it be international, should it be regional? But I think the theme is clear. The theme is, as you said, Daranee, it's borderless. We need to cooperate. As they say, nobody's an island anymore, even if you are an island. But that said, so I'm going to come to you with the first question, right? Obviously, you as policymakers have been proactive with that sort of mindset, right? Cooperating with other countries, whether they are in your immediate region or beyond, right? Give us some insights on, how have they actually supported your thinking, developed your policies, the way you've gone about regulating the country?
Because I think the main thing that we want to, the theme is building bridges, right? So we want to connect everyone. How do you connect in this fintech ecosystem is to make sure that it's interoperable. So a lot of things that we collaborate with our partner, with our counterparts in other countries, is to create the bridge, that link. Mainly, we are working quite extensively in the payment space. Right? So we did a lot of cross-border payments. So we have fast payment in Thailand that is, in itself, is quite successful. It's bringing down, being able to promote digital payment and reduce the cash usage in the country. And we wanted to extend that benefits because the benefits actually not just peer-to-peer, the benefits is to the smaller merchants. We want to extend that benefit to cross-border. So the projects that we just did with Nexus project that connect fast payment with 5 countries, the insights that we learned from that is there is a need for public sector involvement to drive this forward because private sector, there's a lot of incumbents in the market that may not see the benefit, the short term as a benefit. They would probably see this thing as more of a competition. So to drive this thing forward, to bring down, Nexus is wanted have a goal to bring down the cost of remittance cross-border. So to bring down this cost, the public sector involvement, in my opinion, is key, is critical. But we can't do it alone. It's just not the public sector get together and then we don't have a partnership with private sector. That would not work. So public need to act as a catalyst, but need to bring in and buy in the private sector for any project to be successful and to have high adoption.
So that's very interesting, right? Because you've just laid another abstraction to the discussion. So the alliances don't only sit cross-border, but actually also sit between public-private participation. And some of those private participants might actually be international. So it's actually quite interesting.
Yes.
Angelo, let me come to you. LATAM is fascinating. I for one, love reading about what's going on in LATAM. I haven't had the opportunity to work there, maybe one day, right? Brazil has obviously been on the forefront of everything, and you guys have been very progressive with some of your regulation too. So if I specifically take open banking, for example, which I think you rolled out a few years ago, so it's still early days, right? What have you actually seen in terms of the impact that regulation or any other has had in terms of building a more integrated fintech ecosystem, both among domestic fintechs and possibly from across the region? Sorry, it's a handful of a question, but...
Okay. Let me give you a quick view of our framework for fintechs. Basically, I think our framework comprises two pillars. One pillar is put in place a regulation that is suitable for fostering innovation and competition. In this regard, the central bank created 3 new licenses specifically for fintechs. The license of e-money issuer, the license of credit fintech, and the license of payment initiator. And so the fintechs in Brazil entering the financial market in the payments ecosystem using one, two, or both, all these licenses. The other point is that we advocate that the fintechs should be regulated by any government body. We do not want to fintechs outside any regulation, but in competing with traditional banks. And so the difference is that the level of regulation that we impose to fintechs is different for the one that we impose to traditional banks. We have a classification of the institution based on their risk in 5 tiers, and so fintechs and banks are classified in those tiers. This is one pillar, an adequate regulation and adequate licenses for fintechs. The second pillar is the even access of market infrastructure, financial infrastructure to fintechs. Usually, market infrastructure are controlled by the traditional banks, and so when the fintechs start to compete with the banks, they start to put in place some barriers to the fintechs. Okay, you can use this infrastructure for payments, for example. You can use my network of ATMs, but you have to pay a lot, much more than a bank associated of this infrastructure. And so, to respond to this challenge, we create the fast payment system, and also we are putting in place our open finance. In the case of open finance specifically, the interest has the opportunity to receive all the big bunch of information that is stored in traditional banks regarding their clients. And so instead of waiting months and even years to know exactly what is your client, you have just received an authorization of your client, suppose you are a fintech, and then you receive the historical data on credit, on payments, and on investments, and so then the time to market for a fintech would be much faster with open finance.
Thanks, Angelo. Chihiro, let me come to you. I was fortunate enough to be in Japan in March this year. One theme which came out very clear was Japan opening their arms to I guess, fintechs and collaborations across the world, right? Could you please elaborate and expand on what is the vision? What is it that Japan is doing in terms of building bridges?
Thank you. So you might think Japan is domestic and conservative, but like let me assure you, we are trying to become like more approachable regulator. So we are linked this foodie. This is kind of one of the efforts for it. So we are actively engaging in the several initiatives that promote fintech innovation and transforming ourselves into pro innovation. So I'd like to highlight Japan Fintech Week. This year we have Japan Fintech Week in March, and then we welcomed over 30,000 participants from both of international countries and domestic, and concluding with great success. So originally we have held Fintech Summit, which is called FinSum, but we have decided to expand the scale itself significantly and make it more international. So, and this result, like nearly 50 events happened during the Japan FinTech Week, and we welcomed over 50 countries participants. And yeah, so the most important thing, we will have Japan FinTech Week 2025 this next March, and then like actually, can you see this? Yeah, Japan FinTech Week 2025. It's gonna be happen from next March 3rd to 7th. So make your calendar the date, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Chihiro. We all expect a hoodie each now after this session. Last but not least, I'll go to Khaled. I think Khaled knows that the kingdom is very close to my own heart. I've spent the last decade, if not more, working there. Khaled, let's take a bit of a Middle East context and then sort of hone down into the KSA. The Middle East has emerged as a significant fintech hub in the last decade, more so in the last 5 to 7 years, right? Saudi has been at the forefront of it, right? You have accelerated through, I would say, proactive regulation, getting more, I would say, easier to do business with for fintechs, and getting the incumbents to collaborate, right? How do you see Saudi collaborating with other ecosystems in the region and beyond? Any priorities?
Sure. Thank you, Arjun. And you're a frequent visitor to us in Saudi Arabia, so you're welcome any time of the year. So in Saudi central banks, I think we've taken the approach that first we want to work with other central banks, leaders when it comes to fintech. So we have signed a memorandum of understanding with MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore, for exchanging information and support when it comes to financial technology companies, as well as innovation in general. And we're activating that MOU. We're quite active with our colleagues in MAS. And we've also signed another agreement with the HKMA authority in Hong Kong to also exchange ideas, support in terms of regulatory and regulations when it comes to fintechs and innovations in general. We have done another one recently with the Central Bank of Qatar, our colleagues in GCC, Gulf Corporate Councils, and we're also expanding that collaborations with other central banks. On the other hand, we have Fintech Saudi, which is a not-for-profit organization, an association that builds and the catalyst when it comes to financial technology ecosystem in Saudi Arabia. And they've been quite active also reaching out to other associations globally for exchanging ideas, support when it comes to talent, support when it comes to accelerators and other boot camps, and also positioning Saudi as a leader when it comes to fintechs. So it's really an active scene in Saudi Arabia. I think the last few years has been quite important for us. We announced our national fintech strategy just in 2022 with aspirations that we want to reach 525 fintechs by 2030. So we really have a clear North Star that we want to reach. We've also been here to India last year, active in this space, speaking to other fintechs with my hat as a board member in Fintech Saudi and seeing how we can support also international fintechs come to Saudi. Saudi obviously is a G20 country, 28 million populations, and it's going through a transformations, whether it's social or economicals, with our Vision 2030 to even transcend Saudi into a bigger space. Thank you.
Thanks, Khaled. So I'm gonna open up to all panels, and I guess these days you can't get away without talking about CBDCs. If you have policymakers and digital assets in the same conversation. So simple question, right? What has been your country's own approach towards sort of regulating digital assets, specifically CBDCs. How do you actually see CBDCs playing this role of being a catalyst for global alliances? Anyone can have a first go, please.
So thank you. So central bank digital currency is an interesting topic. We at Saudi Central Banks have created a team that looks after CBDC and virtual assets, digital assets. We have joined recently MBridge. MBridge is a BIS, Bank of International Settlements project. We are at MVP stage, minimum viable products. With other central banks to see how this cross-border payments could be enhanced. Obviously, in our presidency in G20, we mentioned that cross-payment is really a broken process, whether when it comes to cost or process, and we want to enhance that. So doing these experimentations on MBridge will help us with other central banks trying to bridge the gap when it comes to cross-border payments. We also do in wholesale CBDC. We don't really see the retail as an active scene for us, given the advances we have in Saudi when it comes to payments. We have instant payments, RTGS, real-time payments, and card rails. So it's really quite advanced. On the wholesale, we're trying to experiment and see how that would work of different settlements that will help us reduce the cost, improve efficiencies. On digital assets, we're really just in the nascent stage, looking at useful use of some of these assets, whether a regulated stable coin or deposit tokenizations or asset tokenizations, really quite in a nascent stage at this stage. Thank you.
Please, Angelo.
Regarding the digital assets, in Central Bank of Brazil, we are running two projects. The first is the regulation of the virtual asset service providers. 2 years ago, the Congress, Brazilian Congress, passed a law and granted the central bank the competence to regulate these environments where digital assets are traded. Okay, by Brazilian, in the same law. The digital representation of a certain asset is regulated as it was this asset. For example, a digital representation of a stock is regulated as a stock. A digital representation of a bond is regulated as a bond, and so on. And so what is the central bank doing now is creating a regulation for the environment or where these digital representation, digital assets are traded. This is one project. The second project is related to the CBDC, the Brazilian CBDC. We spent almost 2 years to answer a very simple question. What is it for? What is the business case in which the CBDC could help or could make it viable? What frictions a CBDC could reduce? And so we concluded that in our case, a CBDC wouldn't help for retail payments, wouldn't help for wholesale payments, but we see some business case, mostly non-liquid for non-liquid assets that a CBDC or a unified ledger, when you put a CBDC, you put the digital representation of some assets, the frictions could be reduced. Okay, let's give you an example. For example, the market of autos, automobiles. The transmission of the ownership of an auto from one person to another person has to be done in a registered house in person. The seller and the buyer between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Okay, but most people search for a new auto during the weekends, and so And also you have the problem of GVP, delivery versus payments. You sign the document, then I make the payment, or I make the payment, and you sign the document. So last year, we ran the first stage of the pilot project of our CBDC, which has already a name, it's DREX. And we put tokenized bank deposits and treasury bonds, and then you tested some traded between tokenized CBDC, tokenized deposits, and treasury bonds, and you tested some operation among those assets. And now we're gonna include some other assets, but it's a pilot project. It's not real transactions. We're gonna include some auto, I'll say the digital representation of auto, and you're gonna also implement liquidity pools between the CBDC and treasury bonds. And so we're running some projects using the CBDC, using a unified ledger. It's something that could be promised, but I think you're gonna take some years to see any concrete consequence of this.
Daranee, Chihiro, anything to add?
Yes, in Thailand, we approach this with two things. First is that there are things that we definitely don't want to see. There's this what we call red lines that we don't want to see. You know, all this digital asset, cryptocurrency, the word currency in it, and people start some when it come out that starting to use it as a general means of payment. That's the thing that we don't want to see, because private money, private issue money, with using it in terms of means of payment, there's many concerns, consumer protection, AML, CFT, and also financial stability concern. So we actually prohibit the use of cryptocurrency, digital asset as a means of payment. But on the other hand, we do see the benefits. The use cases that could come out of this. And one clear use case is like Enbridge that Khaled was saying. We actually started experimenting with HKMA back with, we call it Internal Line Rock Project. That's a wholesale CBDC cross-border. And it actually proven to improve the wholesale cross-border payment significantly, from 3 to 5 days down to mere seconds. And then it's very efficient in that sense. Reduce costs, bypass the correspondent banking model. And that expanded into Enbridge with 4 countries, and then now with Sama joining. So that is actually going into minimum viable products. And so that's the thing that we wanted to promote. And the way we approach that is we actually relax some regulations for our banks to be able to explore digital asset, to be able to invest in fintech companies and help them provide better services to consumers. Another approach, apart from the project that we are involved in, we also opened the enhanced regulatory sandbox for private sector, for banks and non-banks alike, from fintech, from startup, to experiment with stable coins, programmable payment that we see the use case for it. It's not just a retail CBDC as such, as Angelo and Khaled was saying. The fast payment is very efficient and see no needs for the retail CBDC yet. But if there's some programmable payment feature, it could be used quite effectively for government transfer, for example, right? So those things is actually, we wanted to study it more, so we do it as a regulatory, the sandbox, so we can understand it, and we can partner with the players in the market, and making sure that whatever regulation, whatever guardrails that are needed is there, but not to stifle innovation. It's to promote innovation within an acceptable risk framework. So that's the two approach.
I totally agree with that. And so FSA is not directly supervised. In Japan, since we are not central bank, so CBDC things takes care by a Bank of Japan. So let me share some initiative of digital asset generally. So in the rapidly growth field of digital asset, we have been adapting our regulations, in a response to change. So specifically, Japan was one of the first countries to regulate crypto assets, since then, the first legislation of the cryptocurrency, we continue to update our regulations. Regulatory framework address emerging business and challenges such as rampant ICOs, significant security incidents, and stable coins. So notably in our legal reform 2 years ago, we became one of the first countries to regulate stablecoin. Broad coverage of regulatory coverage is one of the unique aspects of Japan's digital asset framework, which covers a variety of tokens, such as stablecoins, tokenized deposit, and tokenized security as well. So we also drew a clear line between NFT and the cryptocurrencies, and so that crypto and NFT business have done under the regulatory certainty. So without saying, ensuring consumer protection and financial stability and preventing financial crime and fraud are always FSA's priorities. So we strike the right balance between innovation and the regulations. So where, our aim is to create the healthy environment to promote innovations and can succeed without disrupting the financial sector. Okay.
Excellent, thank you. So, dear panelists, we have 8 minutes. I have one question each for all of you, so let's please try and keep it to 2 minutes if we don't. Daranee, can I come to you first? So, we've heard all the great stuff about how global alliances are great and, they add to education, they help unlock innovation, so on and so forth. But it's not always an easy ride, right? There are challenges, right? We'd love to hear from you in terms of what are those challenges that you as Thailand have experienced, some insights and takeaways that we can take away from, I guess, the flip side of the coin.
Yes. The biggest challenge that we face right now is also from all this advanced technology that bring with it all cybersecurity risk and fraud risk. And those are the things that we putting a lot of efforts on, because once the economy become more and more digital, it's more and more important to make sure that the system remains secure, trusted, and resilient. So those are, all the cybersecurity threats, all the fraud, they are becoming more sophisticated because they also have a lot of R&D in the fintech, right, in all this technology. So the bad actors can actually use them to their advantage and marginalize, compromise the system. So those are the very biggest challenge that we are facing right now.
Excellent. Angelo.
Yes, I think we have some important lessons dealing with fintechs, regulated fintechs. The first one is that they want to be IT firms, not regulated entities, okay? But we have to say all the time to them, now you are a regulated entity. You have to comply, you have to answer the regulator timely. You have to comply with all rules and so on. So they don't have the culture of a regulated. It's much different for example, to talk with a CEO of a bank or a director of a bank and a director of a fintech. This is the first point. The second point is that many conflicts arose in the market. That in the past, when you have let's say 6, 7 large banks, they used to solve some of the problems inside their doors, among in banking associations and so on. As far as the fintechs start to enter in the payment ecosystem, issue cards, participate in the open finance, in the fast payment, so on. And so they are much more vocal in their interests, and they accuse the traditional banks and so on. It's completely different to deal with this. It's a kind of novel word, and there is much more work for the central bank to deal with the pressures of different segments, because you have the banks, they have their own interests, they have their business models, but on the other hand, you have the fintechs that try to grow, to get more clients from the traditional banks. And it's much more conflictual financial system when you have fintechs. It's much and banks competing together. Then you have only these boring banks and so on.
Fair enough. Chihiro,
So, yeah.
for Japan,
Yes.
you mentioned in the first question when you answered, you're opening doors, you want us all to come in 2025. What are you guys doing from a regulatory framework perspective to make it easier for, I guess, international players to come and operate in Japan?
Okay, so as I mentioned, Japan FinTech Week is of course one of the initiatives that like international companies are easier to get into Japanese market. But I would like to share FinTech Support Desk, which is a one-stop consulting services, handle inquiries related to FinTech and related to fintech, including legal aspects, because you know Japanese is complicated and the Japanese regulations are maybe from foreigners. I mean, like only from Japanese, it's complicated. So we opened the fintech support desk. We established fintech support desk in 2015, and we welcome any question about fintech and to encourage then the discussion, the area. And so we have received over 2,200 inquiries since the established the fintech support desk. Yes.
Excellent. Khaled, last question, but by no means the least. Vision 2030 has a very clear space and a clear ambition for what you want to achieve in financial services, specifically fintech, right? How is that plan aligning with your intention to be a more regional player, creating a more regional and then hopefully an international ecosystem?
Thank you, Arjun. And it's quite an unfair question, given only 2 minutes left in the. I need 2 hours actually to go through this. So I think I just reiterated we have announced our national fintech strategy in 2022, and it was an honor to work on that. And it really stated a clear and explicit timelines where we really wanted to reach at least 525 fintechs by 2030. That's the main KPI. We also have supporting KPIs when it comes to jobs creations, GDP contributions, and investments in the sector. So it's really upon us. And this strategy is really run by us, the Saudi Central Bank, with our colleagues and internal stakeholders in the Saudi government, whether it's Ministry of Investments or other entities, to really attract FDIs, support from VCs, PEs, and international fintechs. And so far, we've been really successful. In the last 3 years ago, we had a double low digits of fintechs, I think less than 28. Today, we have 220 plus fintechs. And it was really the way we enabled the sector, at least in Saudi central banks. We've created the regulatory sandbox in 2018. that really enabled fintechs to come with use cases that are not regulated. We started with the payments, then we pivoted to crowdfunding, then we moved to buy now, pay later, and now we're really at the open banking stage where we also published our open banking framework, and that will enable the sharing of account informations, and then we also do on payment initiations in the next few weeks. We will publish that as well. So it's really an active scene. We also created a specific deputyship within Saudi Central Bank called Innovation Deputyships, Financial Innovations, and the sole role of that deputyship is really to be the catalyst when it comes to financial innovations, including fintech. So it's a very active scene, and also would like to invite everybody to come and attend our Fintech Week. That's 3rd of September to the 5th of September, and this is the first time we have that. So that's really also to showcase our fintech ecosystem and the flourishing environment when it comes to fintechs in Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got 10 seconds, and I'm going to do a career-limiting move, which is put policymakers on the spot. If all of you had one concrete step that you could take towards making this ecosystem more integrated globally, what would that be? Any take?
What we're doing right now, collaborate.
I agree.
I agree. The problem, this fintech, the problem is not the tech. It's much more legal, regulatory issues, governance. I think the tech is solved.
Khaled?
I think we start regionally, then we grow up to globally, and I think that's the way it goes. Thank you.
If I could speak on behalf of some of the fintechs, I think if regulatory harmonization could be sort of brought a little bit up to the topic, at least at a regional level, I think we would see, in my humble opinion, greater innovation. At least that's what the voice of the fintechs is. With that, I'd like to thank you all. We're out of time, so apologies, we won't be able to take any Q&A today, but you're more than welcome to network with the panelists on the site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.